Thank you, JR. The NASCAR Sprint Cup Series ready to roll in New England. Opening practice as the cars roll off. 90 minutes this session as we get set for qualifying later this afternoon here on Speed. An absolute gorgeous day. Chamber of Commerce weather here at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Temperature in the mid-70s, low humidity, and a slight breeze. And Kyle Petty, how did you get ready for opening practice at a 1-mile track? I bet you weren't doing this, huh?
And if you're going to drive, he's got the right club. I will say that since he's got the driver.
We will not evaluate his swing. We will just give you our thoughts on what's about to happen on track. With Kyle Petty and Larry McReynolds, I'm Adam Alexander. Good to have you with us here on Speed. So 90 minutes, Larry. How you using this time to get ready for the rest of the weekend?
Well, I think we'll see a lot of agendas down there on this racetrack during this hour-and-a-half practice session. Yes, certainly you want to qualify well. This is one of those tracks where a good qualifying position really pays dividends because of track position and pit selection on race day. But I think also it's almost a rhythm racetrack. You'll see teams in the first hour or so making long race runs. But the biggest thing, we talked about this in Nationwide Series practice, this racetrack has the speeds of an intermediate speedway, but has the handling characteristics of a very flat short track.
And the braking of a road course, okay? Because you guys got to hammer the brakes. And I think you are going to see a lot of agendas. I think if weather's going to be an issue tomorrow, if you're looking at things like that, you've got the North race that's going to be up here. You've got the Busch race or Nationwide race that's going to be here. So many different types of rubber. It's going to be different this morning than it is this afternoon. It's going to be different tomorrow than it is Sunday. So these guys are going to be working on race stuff too.
Martinsville on steroids, is that a safe way to define this place?
That would be part of it. But now we just watched Jimmy Johnson swing a golf club. They tell me you were swinging a mean golf club yesterday in the Speedway's children's charity.
Don't believe everything you hear, Larry.
I'm just saying
he's
what I was being
begging for strokes is what he's doing.
That's what I was just being told.
Right. Matt Yoakum, bail us out here.
Well, I can back you up on one thing. Last week at Sonoma, 9 of the top 12 drivers in the championship standings swapped spots, which is good news for Ryan Newman back in 15th. Only 82 markers out of 12. He comes to a place where he has a lot of success. 2 wins, 4 poles, and they brought back a proven piece, the Phoenix winner, which hasn't seen action since April. Now the goal, the first hour, work on their race trim, the final 30 minutes. Throw it out the window, go for the pole. That's what they're going to work on because they feel like with their draw, Lindsey Zarniak 24th, they have a great shot at the 5th pole here in New Hampshire.
Matt, the way I see it, Jeff Burton should have won about 3 times already this season. They've come so close, but they just haven't been able to end their day in victory lane. But this is really the one place where Jeff and his entire team comes and has a lot of confidence. That's because Jeff has won here more than any other driver, 4 times. He hasn't done it in 10 years, but he still feels like every time he goes out there, he's got the precision. He has the correct anticipation of what to expect on the track when you can't necessarily see it. Right now, they're still in race trim. They tested in Milwaukee. They're going to see if they hit on a few good things to get him back into that winner's circle. Guys.
Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you, Matt. Plenty of time for drivers to go through the paces in this practice session. And I talked to Todd Barrier as you watch Jeff Burton on track here. I asked him how he would manage this 90 minutes, Larry, and he said, oh, we'll make a couple of qualifying runs, but we hate to spend too much time on qualifying because if you go out and you don't qualify well, you've wasted all that time.
Well, let me tell you this about this place. This place is hard to go out and run fast or faster or as fast as you ran in practice qualifying because you can get so deceived with a little bit of heat in your tires. But I want to talk about one more agenda here this weekend. Yeah, the agenda is to sit on the pole today. The agenda is to win the race on Sunday. But remember, in 10 weeks, this is where we come back to start that chase. You want to learn as much as you can for this weekend for when that chase starts. Looks like Joey Logano has already had a little bit of an encounter.
Is that a right rear tire down on the 20?
Yeah, but you could see the black marks where you see the black marks that come off. He's on. This thing looks like it's like it gets away from him. You see him up, out. It's sideways. And he's just buzzing that right rear. You see the black marks come all the way across into the infield. Lucky that where he spun, he got in the grass and the thing slowed down. Look how low it is. Look, the rear end has fallen out from under this thing. Look how low that is, Larry.
Yeah, I mean,
that's more than a flat tire on the right rear, just about, it looks like, doesn't it?
It almost looks like something is broke. You would not think it would be that low. Joey's 12th quickest, and he had run 5 laps. So I don't know. That's I know you don't run a lot of air pressure in these tires.
Yeah, but you wouldn't think it would be that low on the left side. You know what I mean? If the right side was down, it would, like, the rear end would jack around a little bit. It looks like that's pretty low.
But it's definitely all the way on the rim on that right rear, and if they're not careful, they're going to have even more damage.
Yeah, and you know, and that's one of those places. Aero is a big thing here. So you've got those side skirts. You measure them, you cut them, you do all that. He just wore all those off. So now they got to replace all those as they replace the tire.
Joey Logano won this race here a year ago, his only Sprint Cup Series victory. Jimmy Johnson quickest early in this practice session.
And Matt Yoakum's relaxing.
The green flag being displayed again here at New Hampshire after a quick caution when Joey Logano went around on the back straightaway. Marcos Ambrose, one of the drivers, out taking time here today and trying to get his car dialed in. Sure, it was a long week for driver 47, Kyle.
And that's it. It's a long week for Marcos. This is the best place for him to be, is back in a race car. You know, I don't know how to explain it from a driver's perspective, but when things like last week happen, or you make a mistake on the racetrack, or you get in an accident, the best place for you to recuperate is sitting behind that wheel, because that's your job. You know what it's like? That's your comfort zone, and he can focus on this now. This car, and as soon as his practice is over, that race is behind him. He won't think about it. It'll come up in nightmares, believe me, but he won't think about that again. So this is a good place for him to be.
And you know, I was talking to Jimmy Finning down in the garage area this morning, who has now taken over the 17 car as crew chief for Matt Kenseth. Todd Parrott has been moved to manager of the R&D department. And like Jimmy and I were talking, and of course you think about Roush Fenway. That team, other than Jamie McMurray's win at Talladega, they have not won since Matt won at Auto Club Speedway last February. And he said, Larry, it's so hard to win in this garage area right now. And I think that's probably the biggest thing the 47 car is looking at. It appeared it was their race to give away.
Exactly right. And you look at, we talk about the 48, we talk about the 24, we talk about the 11, we talk about the 18. Those guys put themselves in positions week in and week out to win races. They're there. They're top 4, top 5 cars. Here's a team that when the season starts, they check 2 races right off the top, Watkins Glen and Infineon, and say, okay, this is a place we can win. So when you give one of those away, or one of those slips away from you, it's devastating for a team, because you've got 2 out of 38 or 36, where these other guys like Jimmy and those guys, they feel like they got 36 out of 36. So when they slip away from you, it can be devastating. But you know, I got to give it. I thought he did a great job coming on so many shows this week, talking about it, just being open about it. So many guys would have hidden in a cave somewhere and just said, no, I got nothing else to say about it. But he did a great job of being open with it. That was good. That was good for him and good for the fans too.
Sure, some counseling coming from the crew this week as well to help him get ready mentally for the drive here this weekend at New Hampshire. And there you see Joey Logano. If you're just joining us, early moments of practice. He had made a handful of laps, went around on the back straightaway, and the crew has gone to work, Larry, trying to get this thing where it needs to be.
I believe they're tightening it up. Yeah. Making adjustments. And of course, Joey's one of those drivers doing double duty. He just climbed out of that Nationwide Series car. And Matt, it's quite a bit different to drive the Sprint Cup Series car.
Absolutely, Larry Mack. And Jason Shapiro, the car chief on the 20, he's been underneath the right rear of this. Joey basically told Greg Zipadelli, it's been loose, and then all of a sudden it just snapped loose, and then it went around. So right now they're looking at the rear of the machine. He's also talking about the brake pedal, which will follow brakes all weekend here. One of the heavier braking places says the brake pedal feels a little spongy, so they're going to look at that as well.
Yeah, I don't know. To have just spun and had a flat right rear, they're changing a lot of stuff. They got 2 wedge wrenches in the back, spinning jack bolts up out of the, and you know how hard these guys work to get their heights right and to get everything right. Basically, looking at that shot, they're telling you, okay, we're in a bad place. We got to start all over with the rear of this car. Exactly. And that's why you see them up under it. No matter what they're changing, it's hard to see from this angle, but they're starting all over.
Some new faces and new places this weekend here at New Hampshire. You saw the graphic. Andy Lally driving the TRG number 71, replacing Bobby Labonte. Known for his road racing, a 3-time Rolex champion over on the Grand Am side, making his oval debut this weekend in the Sprint Cup Series.
Yeah, I talked to Andy this morning down in the garage area. He didn't get the call till Tuesday to run this car. He actually races in some road race series, 3 different series here in 2010. So he's a very busy guy. It appears this maybe is only a 1-race deal for Andy.
So Bobby Labonte was driving the 71. He moves over and now will pilot the number 7 for Robbie Gordon this weekend. Of course, Robbie coming off the best run he's had in quite some time. A runner-up finish last week at Sonoma. A team that is challenged in regard to funds, but they are going to race this weekend with the former series champion Bobby Labonte behind the wheel. And then here's Jeff Gordon. Look at the run he's been on the last couple of weeks. Back-to-back top 5 finishes, and he was a part of the headline story last week at Sonoma.
Yeah, he was. He bounced off a few guys, or a few guys bounced off him. It depends on which fan you are.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And that is something you don't expect from Jeff Gordon. I think a couple of the incidents he got in. You know, I thought the thing with the 56 car with Truex was just. You know, I hated to see that happen for Truex, but you know, when he explained it, he said, "Okay, I looked in the mirror. When I looked up, they were stopping, and I run into him. I need to talk to Truex and apologize." He manned up and said, "That's what I'm going to do." But you know, that was a big deal. You know, some of the stuff that happened. And
those incidents that Kyle is referring to really had a major impact on points, Larry. You look at Truex, he was right where he needed to be to make a push into the chase, running in the top 5 before all that went down. And here's another perfect example. Clint Boyer, who was involved in an early wreck last week, had rallied into the top 5. He too was on the back end of one of those spins.
Well, you know, we still have 10 races to go to the chase, but as you talk to drivers and you read drivers' quotes, you can see and feel that desperation is starting to set in. And going back to Truex, I think the biggest blow to that group, that's the first good run they've had in a while. They've had some bad luck. They didn't run near as good as Charlotte as they thought they were going to run. They were having a good top 5, top 10 run and felt like it was taken away.
Casey Kane has made a nice jump in points the last couple of weeks. Solid runs at both Michigan and Sonoma. Let's go down to Lindsay Zarniak.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Greg Biffle is still in his garage stall, and right now what they're working on is giving him some more rear grip. But I just talked to his crew chief, Greg Irwin, who said they're not going to stay in this race trim long. They want to get him back out there quickly and then swap over to qualifying because he is not happy with their qualifying draw. He said they're going out fit. Larry Mack, maybe you could help explain why that is so critical, because he talked to me about how disappointing they were last year when they weren't able to make the most of a good qualifying spot.
Yeah, again, this is a fairly short race, and this race is known to have some fairly long green runs. Pit selection is so critical. Track position, actually, from the drop of the green flag is pretty important, but this is definitely one of those places where just mentally you want a late draw. You don't want to go early.
You don't want to go early, man. You want the best opportunity to do the best you can.
15 minutes into this practice session, Elliott Sadler the quickest. For the first time, Barrett Jackson, the world's greatest collector car auction on speed, comes to Orange County. Hundreds of restored and rare cars will be auctioned off to the highest bidder. Catch 3 days of live coverage with expert commentary. Barrett Jackson, Orange County, kicks off tonight, 5 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Speed. Let's send it downstairs to Matt Yoakum.
And Jimmy McMurray, the Daytona 500 champion, just finished a debrief with his teammate Juan Pablo Montoya. Both Earnhardt Ganassi cars top 10. So comparing your cars to Juan's, how are they?
Juan said his car was really loose, and he was just asking about the balance of mine. My car felt really good. It was a little loose and a little tight, kind of all in the same. But the Swap Chevrolet, they did a really good job unloading for us today with a good setup. So we're just going to switch over to qualify now because it's so important here to start up front. So had good pace in race trim, so we'll hopefully have it now in qualifying trim.
Does this track change a lot over the course of the weekend?
You know, they run so many different classes here, and it's really easy to blame it on that. If you pull out in practice after the modifieds or the East cars have been on the track, whether you're good or bad, sometimes you tend to blame it on that. So it's just nice that, you know, we go after the nationwide cars so you know what kind of rubber's on the track.
All right, good luck this weekend.
What?
I said good luck this weekend.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
McMurray with some new colors on the car this week. He's currently 9th quick in this practice section. Ashley just slipped back to 10th. And here's Kyle Busch, a driver that would like to get things going in the right direction after a disappointing trip a week ago.
With some old colors on this car.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, this is what the 18 should look like. You know what I mean? In your mind, a lot of times when you think about it, he had to have dominated the road courses like he did a couple of years ago, they were just never a factor when we got to Infineon. And that surprised me about the total Gibbs organization. I know Denny got in a little bit of an accident. I thought the 20 car did a really good job for only his 2nd time out there. But these guys were just never an issue.
They never were. And who would believe we would leave any race weekend and the highest finishing Joe Gibbs car would be 33rd, which is where the 20 car finished. But, you know, I want to go back to something McMurray was talking with Matt about. The question, does this racetrack change over the course of the weekend? It will, but the biggest thing is how this track changes with weather swings. I'm going to tell a quick story. This man is my witness. We used to have 2 rounds of qualifying, and in 1994 we came up here, the second race we were here, we sat on the pole with Ernie Irvin, the 28 car. They used to lock the first 20 cars in, and then you could either stand on your time or re-qualify.
Where did I qualify?
This man was 21st and stood. It dropped about 30 degrees the next day, and he got knocked out of the field. Wow. Everybody beat him.
Everybody that went beat me. I had to use a provisional to get in the race. And it's like, you're 21st. How does everybody beat you?
It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, but it was like, it was incredible. And you're right. This racetrack, you know, you heard Jamie talk about the rubber and rubbering up. If it rains and washes that off, it changes. But this track is temperature sensitive. If it drops, if it goes up, it can get hot and slick. It can get a lot of grip. So it's hard for the crew chiefs and hard for the drivers to chase this thing.
And I would guess, Larry, you got to be careful from a crew chief's perspective on how hard you work on the race car. Because of the constant change here, you can dial yourself out chasing something that's never going to be a factor.
Well, you can, but the biggest thing is how hard it is to go out and repeat your practice run in qualifying simply because of heat in the tires. It looks like Joey Logano in this 20 car, they are back out there after spinning just a little bit ago.
And that's an excellent point. You know, we have seen, you see it at Martinsville sometimes, and it really depends on where you're at. And you talk about the heat in the tire. I can't tell you how many times we have come up here in the past and you go out and you think, man, I'm going to bust off a lap right here, dude. And you go down the corner and that thing slides and it pushes and it's loose and it's free and it's all over. And then you'll see Jeff Gordon go out and throw away his first lap and run a real easy first lap just to get some heat in the tires and then come back and bust off a lap like he's never busted off all day long. And that's the one thing these guys are trying to figure out. Is my first lap better? Is my second lap? Where was I at with my stuff? Yeah. Trying to figure that type thing.
Talk about drivers that have done a nice job in recent weeks in gaining positions in the standings. Dale Earnhardt Jr. knocking on the door of the top 12.
But I still think there's so much work to do with this 88 car. You know, when I look at the competition right now, and I know they finished 11th at Finion, had a good top 10 finish at Michigan. They're going to have to start clicking a lot of top 10s and a lot of top 5s, because when you think about it, this team only has 4 top 10 finishes here in 2010, and it's going. I don't care if you're 13th in points, it's going to take more than that, I think, to get you solidly in that top 12.
And when you look at the history for driver 88 here at New Hampshire, it's not great. This has not been one of his better racetracks when you look at the numbers. However, we go to Daytona next week, the only top 5 of his season coming there in the 500 in February, and then Chicagoland, a place where he has a victory. So there is some work to be done, as you point out, Larry, but perhaps if you get through another weekend here at New Hampshire, the door is open for optimism.
And there's some bright spots. And I'm going to say the 88 car last year on our race on TNT, he ran a great race here. The first half of the race, they put everything together. Then he got, I think he had a lug nut, something happened, and they had to go back in the pack, and they struggled. And that goes back to what Larry's been talking about here from qualifying and track position. This place is so hard to pass on the racetrack. Yeah, it's not, you know, you talk about it being Martinsville on steroids. Well, we saw at Martinsville, you can bump a guy, ease a guy up out. Here you don't do that.
13th in points is Dale Earnhardt Jr., but as Larry said, there is no margin for error. Tonight, NASCAR heads to New Hampshire, where everyone is revved up as Jeff Burton stops by the ultimate Friday night house party. Carl Edwards will be there as well. Don't miss NASCAR Trackside tonight, 11 Eastern, only on Speed. Mark Martin won here in the fall. He's on track right now in the 25th position as we send it back to the garage and Matt Yoakum.
Clint Boyer's car up on jack stands. They are already swapping over to their qualifying setup. Clint feels really good about their race setup. It started out a little too tight, but really came to him. And remember, this is a great place for him. Dominated back in 2007, winning the race. And you know what, guys? Looking at this car, it's 12th on the board. He has a chicken sponsor on it. The last time, I could be wrong, I saw a chicken sponsor in Cup. It was a Hal Needham movie starring Burt Reynolds.
Clyde Torkel.
Stroker Ace.
Stroker Ace.
But you know what Shane Wilson and Clint Boyer has done with this 33 car, it looks like they maybe made one long run. They're 12th quickest. They've run 13 laps. But to kind of solidify what I was talking about, the importance of qualifying, Right now, when I look at the top 11, all but Jeff Burton in the 31 car, it looks like those 10 of those 11 cars are solely working on qualifying. Now, mind you, 4 of them are go or go homers, which we know their first race is to get in the race, but I think that just shows the importance of qualifying here.
45 teams here this weekend. 43 will make the field. Back down to Lindsay.
Thanks, Adam. Yeah, Tony Stewart, not one of those guys that's in qualifying trim yet. He just pulled out of his garage stall. The team was trying to make him a little bit more comfortable, giving him some more grip. They're going to do one more race run and then bring him in and swap it over. For Tony, though, he's really happy with where the car was. They tested in Milwaukee, and Darian Grubb told me right before this practice started that they gave him a brand new setup. It's what they found in Milwaukee that really seemed to work. So even though Tony is a 2-time winner here, they're trying something completely different this time.
And Tony's actually won a total of 4 times here. 2 in the Sprint Cup Series, 1 in the Nationwide Series, and he won an IndyCar race here in 1998. They just made the announcement, I guess, that the IndyCars are coming back here
next
to
year.
New Hampshire Motor Speedway in 2011.
Which would be cool. And you heard her talk about testing at Milwaukee. A lot of guys go to Milwaukee and test because it's the only thing probably around that's comparable. Flat, mile, and it doesn't back this up. You can find stuff. So many times teams go to Milwaukee and set up for Milwaukee and then try to go someplace and say, well, it worked at Milwaukee, why won't it work here? This place is just enough different. It's like saying, well, it worked at Daytona, why won't it work at Talladega? You know what I mean? There's just so many subtleties to each of those racetracks, but it does give you an attitude check on what the car needs to be on the straightaways and in the corners.
And with the testing policy, this is the first year they've been able to go to Milwaukee,
yes,
because now it's no longer on the Nationwide Series or the Camping World Truck Series schedule.
And that's a nice benefit for Sprint Cup Series teams to have another option in regard to testing. Currently 8th quick is Kurt Busch. He's won here 3 times in the last 12 races, and when you look at his consistency, certainly a driver that you would put on your list of favorites coming to New Hampshire.
You know, we talked about the 10 races to the chase. We're in the race to the chase now. What I keep hearing this team talk about it, hear Kurt talk about it, hear Steve Addington talk about it, is how many points they are in front of the 13th place team right now. This team is 243 points, and the goal is you want to always keep at least 1 race ahead. If you can be more than 1 race ahead of the 13th place, that makes you feel a little better about it as we go along.
Yeah, and you know, you had an interesting point a minute ago in the break here when you said it's not that the guys that are 19th and 20th are that far out of 13th. It's just there's so many cars between them and 13th. And the thing is, that means you've got to count on 8 cars having trouble, not just 1 car. If there's only 1 car in front of you and you're racing that 13th place car, that's one thing. But when you start racing 8 cars plus that 13th or 14th place or 12th place car, that's hard, man.
Yeah, because now you're becoming dependent. As we look here, you can see just 13th, 14th, 15th within 82 points behind Carl Edwards. You're dependent on you having good runs and depending on some of those guys in front of you to have bad runs.
It's hard for race fans to believe that you could be 15th and go out and win every race and still miss the chase, because those guys that are 14th, 14th, 13th right in front of you could finish 2nd and 3rd the whole time. Lindsay?
Thanks, Kyle. Carl Edwards doesn't have much time because he's getting ready to go back out there. But Carl, you said you were happy with the car out there in race runs.
Yeah, it's handling pretty well. You know, we've had a little bit of trouble here lately, and we're pretty good. We made 1 run in race trim, and it's got a lot of grip. And I got to follow Jamie. He's been really good here, and I felt like I could almost keep up with him. So we're going to try a couple more things and go to qualifying trim. But my Aflac Fusion seems pretty good.
All right, Carl getting ready to head out there. Guys, he was given a special presidential honor this week also. Maybe we can talk to him about that a little bit later. He's going to be helping out with some fitness.
And to me, that team is a lot like the 88 team. Yeah, they're in the top 12, Adam, but when you look at it, only 1 top 5 finish in 2010. He's only led 2 laps. 2 laps total this entire season.
And that's hard to believe. When you go back to 08 and you look at that year, and then you think, how could a team go from that in 08 to where they're at? Which is phenomenal. And it's not that Carl Edwards forgot how to drive a race car. Still one of the best race car drivers out there. And I don't mean fast. I mean a race car driver who can take something and make nothing out of it. Or take nothing and make something out of it, excuse me. But, it's hard to believe that the Roush or the Ford teams have got themselves in that position. They're coming back, though.
Now, Jeff Hammond takes something and makes nothing out of it.
That's true. I've done that. I've done that many times.
Just over a third of the way through our opening practice of the weekend. Jeff Gordon appears to be in race trim. He has been on track and turned 25 laps. He will head to the garage. Carl Edwards back out working on his race car. He's inside the top 20 on the speed chart. 17th is where he clocks in. Jimmy Johnson, the fastest of them all. 5 laps he has turned, an indication perhaps he has been working on the qualifying setup in his race car.
I'm not sure. That surprises me that Jimmy's at the top of the board because we don't see that a lot during the course of the year.
Shocking. And he won last week.
Yeah,
and he's in a slump.
Shocking.
Talk about Jimmy Johnson, second in points after that win last week at Sonoma. So they've now recorded 4 victories on the season. And New Hampshire, Larry, something you pointed out earlier in our show, is the first race when NASCAR's version of the playoffs begins in September. So there is no doubt for some teams there is a little bit of a thought process about the future when they come here this weekend. How much do you bridge trying to win the race this weekend if you're Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson, knowing that you have a good standing in the points, versus making sure you're ready when you come back here looking for a championship?
There is no question. When you leave here, regardless of where you finish, you want to feel like you've got a good data bank to come back here in September. We know the track will be a little bit different. Good possibility it'll be a little cooler. But also remember, you want those bonus points. And Lindsay, this group is only 10 points away from having tied with Denny Hamlin, who has 50 bonus points.
Yeah, you're right. I'm down here in the 48 end of the garage, and Jimmy, they're saying, is very, very happy with this car. He is, as you guys said, in qualifying trim, but he kind of doesn't know what to change. It's sort of what you guys were talking about before. It's like you don't want to press the issue and do something that's going to mess the car up. The other thing, though, that a lot of guys down here are worrying about is also the difficulty of getting onto pit road here. Do you guys know what they're talking about?
It is pretty tricky because the entrance of pit road, Kyle, is almost right there dead in the middle of turn 4 or late exit.
Hey, did we not, was it the race last year or one of those that Earnhardt got into somebody, or I don't know who it was. Anyhow, we had an incident last year coming in, or I think it was this race last year, one of the races, coming into pit road. Guys stayed out too far, cut back across the guys. You know how when you get to racing, you get below that yellow line up there coming in, and they just couldn't check up in time and got into somebody right at the entrance of pit road right there. And it is hard to get in. A lot of times during practice, you'll see the guys peel off in the middle of the backstretch and take the access road around to stay off the racetrack. But in the race, it is a tough place because the entrance is so early. It's all the way back almost to the entrance to turn 4, not at the exit of turn 4.
A.J. Allmendinger on track. He's looked good lately. 5 consecutive finishes inside the top 15, and he's currently 24th in this practice session.
Well, I don't know that we've made a big note out of it. His teammate, Elliott Sadler, in that 19 car, second quickest so far.
Elliott had a very good run going last week at Sonoma before getting turned around in turn 11. Back down to Matt.
Adam, a solid foundation early on for Dale Earnhardt Jr. with their initial package. He felt the car had the right feel he was looking for, had grip. So then they started experimenting, swapping things around. They put in a couple different springs, went out, didn't like how the car turned. They made another change. He just came back in, said it was just too early, too free. Washed out. It was almost like they laid the spoiler back. Just absolutely zero grip at about the 60% mark in the corner. But they really like what they started out with initially, so they're experimenting. So look for good things this weekend here with driver 88.
I mean, this place is such a challenge. I mean, the real key, keep that thing turning and rotating through the middle, but you can't be too loose off, and that's like walking a tightrope.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. 19th. Johnson, Sadler, Keselowski, Nemechek, Montoya, the top 5. Sprint brings you an inside look at what is happening now inside the Sprint Cup Series. And you can see fastest lap time today in practice, Jimmy Johnson, 29.16 seconds. And he did that on his 5th lap of the day. For more NASCAR stats, in-car audio, and live race radio, check out NASCAR Sprint Cup Mobile at sprint.com/speed. Heard from Jamie McMurray moments ago. Felt good about his race car. He is now back on track. And you see the new paint scheme for the number 1.
Jamie has run a total of 7 laps so far. Last lap was 29.98, fast lap 29.57.
You know, and we talk about up here, some of these guys doing the 71 car. Surprisingly, has the best 10-lap average. He's been out there more than anybody else. You talk about 5-lap averages and 10-lap averages. That's pretty amazing. So there are a lot of guys that are just doing qualifying runs. And my point is, the 71 has been out making multiple runs. That's not 10 laps in a row, okay, for what we're looking at. But Jamie has more paint schemes than anybody I know. You know, the kid's got more sponsors than anybody. I think because of his hair, that's why he's got this suave thing going. You know
but in 2010, that's a beautiful thing. Are you saying that that sponsor wouldn't work good for Larry Mack?
It would work good for Larry Mack. No, well, I'll say this. It would work really good for Jamie, and it would work really good for Matt Yoakum. Okay.
If they sent me a case of Suave, it'd last me about 2 years.
A lifetime guarantee for you and I, right, Larry Mack? Talk about lap averages. No surprise, Tony Stewart topping this list because he's been very good at New Hampshire over the years. Carl Edwards, solid in the second position. What about Scott Speed?
You know, I'm going to tell you, that 82 car has run better and better. He kind of caught on the last part of last year. When you watch the first half, it's like, who is this kid and what's he doing? And all of a sudden, we make the turn. And it shows, I think that shows in Joey Logano and some of those guys how much better and how much more competitive they are this year. They get used to the racetracks. They get used to the travel. You get used to a little bit of everything, and you fall into that cycle and that rhythm. And Scott's done a great job at a lot of places he's been this year.
Saw Travis Quapple on track there in the 38. In the 38, he's one of the teams that must qualify in on time later today, and he's 6th quick in this practice.
And if you remember 3 weekends ago at Pocono, this team had a rule infraction, unapproved modification to the valve stem hardware or the caps. They appealed part of that penalty, and that was not overturned by the appeal committee. So this team loses 150 driver owner points, $100,000 fine. Crew chief Stephen Lane, the car chief, the tire specialist, a 12-race suspension and on probation until December the 31st.
Let's hear more about Tony Stewart with Lindsay.
Adam, we talked about how Tony and team had tested down at Milwaukee. Tony's out of the car now. What kinds of things did you find there that you're working on here in New Hampshire?
You know I'm not going to tell you that.
I just thought I'd try.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with our car. We got our office depulsed by Chevy pretty decent so far today. So a little earlier than normal, we're going to switch to qualifying trim and see if we can get a good qualifying run in.
You've obviously had experience here in Victory Lane, but what is, from your perspective, the biggest challenge at this track?
Well, it's you know, you fight the same things you fight anywhere else, but it's with tighter corners here, it's you fight to make it rotate in the center, and you fight to make it have good forward drive off. So you know, it's just finding that balance of how to get both of them at the same time.
Thanks, Tony. Tony, changing over to qualifying trim, like you said, a little bit early, Adam.
You know, I'm racking my brain here. We're 16 races into this season. I believe that's the first time I've seen Tony actually do an interview during practice session. You think it has anything to do with sending Lindsay Zarniak over there to interview him?
I'm saying
comment
yes.
here?
I'm saying yes. I've seen Lindsay with Clint and some of those other guys when she interviews.
It's kind of like our driver meetings.
It's kind of like our driver meetings with Lindsay. I say yes.
I wish it was that easy for me. You know that? Sunday, NASCAR Race Day rocks the Granite State. Join JR, Kenny, Hermie, Wendy, and special guest Jimmy Spencer as they give you the ultimate setup before NASCAR's best hit the Magic Mile. NASCAR Race Day, built by the Home Depot, live from New Hampshire, Sunday at 10 a.m. Eastern, only on Speed.
Now, Kurt Busch, I believe these boys are definitely working on race runs, and he's run 20 laps, but he's 9th quickest. Other than Clint Boyer, who now I think is in qualifying trim at 2nd quickest, Kurt Busch is by far the fastest guy that's in race trim.
Let's get something on Martin Truex Jr. down to Matt.
Adam Marcos Ambrose was the only driver. Felt like he let one get away in Sonoma. A great run going, but caught up in a crash was Martin Truex Jr. Currently here at New Hampshire, 36 on the board. Before they put the car up on jack stands, he said he was chatting in both fronts and in the corner. Just felt like the car just flops over on the right side. They're swapping over to qualifying setup now here on the 56. But you know what? Every time you come up to New England, you could always find a Truex behind the wheel. One of his home tracks. Remember, he won down at the Monster Mile at Dover. Always looking for good things here on the Magic Mile.
Yeah, right now he's run a total of 11 laps, but there, as Matt pointed out, looks like they're getting ready to put this 56 car in qualifying trim. We're about halfway through this practice.
See that groove tire right there? Explain that groove tire, Larry. People on Twitterville ask about the groove tires all the time.
It's not a rain tire.
Okay.
What it is, it's a consistent tire that Goodyear supplies to the team. They use them as tow tires when they haul the car in the hauler, but it gives them a consistent tire to measure and weigh their car on their scales in the garage area.
Perfect example. You get that question all the time because people see these tires and they're so much different than the other tires in the garage area. They're like, well, why are those guys running groove tires? They must have something special, but they're really not. Exactly. They're your setup and your tow stuff. You know, and we went to, before we did the Truex thing, you showed Kurt Busch out there. Kurt Busch is one of those guys with the only Dodge team, the only Dodge organization with Penske, that's kind of sneaking into that thing where you say, you know, Kurt really runs good at New Hampshire. You know, Kurt runs good at Sonoma or Infineon. You know, Kurt runs good at Talladega. This is one of those teams that's just right out there, that's just right under the radar that you really don't pay any attention to, a lot of attention to, let me say that. And all of a sudden you look at the rundown and they're 4th and they're 5th and they're 6th. He had something happen to him late in the race, but he had a top 5, top 10 run going out at Infineon also. So it's been cool to watch that team really come into its own this year.
A lot of parity inside the top 12 in points right now. 6 different owners represented there. We saw that last year. We're seeing it again, and that really speaks volumes about the depth in the series right now, Larry.
Well, it really does. You know, you go back a few years ago, almost half of the top 12 was Roush Fenway cars. They had 5 cars in the chase, but I think that just shows you where the competition's at today. As we're looking at Juan Pablo Montoya in this 42 car set on the pole here in the fall. He's 6th quickest right now.
But it does show you how the sport constantly evolves and constantly changes. If you go back 20 years, if we had the chase, there would be 12 different owners in the top 12. Okay.
Good point.
Then you go back 8 or 10 years, there's only 3 or 4 owners in the top 10. Now we've come back to where you're putting 6 or more in, and we need 6 or more owners and 6 or more organizations in the chase for the fans to make it all inclusive.
And this has really been a wide open track here at New Hampshire as well. I know you guys were talking about the history in the Nationwide Series during their practice earlier today, Larry. And when you look at the Sprint Cup Series, the last 10 races here have featured 10 different winners. So in many ways, it's anybody's game when they put the green flag in the air here on Sunday.
Well, it is. And a lot of that, Adam, has to do with strategy, a lot like what the Nationwide Series. But if you remember, the weatherman has actually won the last 2 June races here. Kurt Busch and Joey Logano were the beneficiaries of it.
Yeah, but you know, and this race has come down to just people absolutely outrunning people in that 10 race span. Rain has been a factor. Fuel mileage has been a factor. There's so many things that can tweak a race up here. People always talk about, you know, the Sonomas or the Watkins Glen road course type races as being wild cards. Martinsville is a little bit of a wild card. Talladega, obviously, and Daytona can be a wild card. But this is one of those races, man. Something happens to you, you get back in that pack, you cannot fight your way back with 10 laps to go from 19th. You're going to finish 16th or 17th.
Talk about different drivers in the chase. Last year, Brian Vickers had this 83 car there. His story well documented. The weekend at Dover, stepped away from this race car and has since announced he will not be racing throughout the remainder of 2010 because of blood clots. His replacement, Casey Mears. Mears drove the car until last weekend at Sonoma when Matthias Ekstrom, a road racing expert, got in behind the wheel of the 83. And this weekend, the opportunity for Reed Sorensen to drive this vehicle for the first time, and he'll be in it the next 3 weeks.
But even though that it's been duly noted that Brian Vickers will probably not be back in this car in 2010, I love the fact that this is still Brian Vickers' car.
Yeah,
it's still his team, and his name is still above that door.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reed Sorensen, when you think about it, he didn't even know if he was going to be able to run a race coming in 2010. Now he's basically running both full schedules.
Jeff Burton and Matt Kenseth, former teammates, talking things over at New Hampshire. Fuel your passion for racing with Speed Mobile. Get the latest NASCAR news and results as soon as they become available, sent right to your phone. Text NASCAR to Speed 3 for Speed NASCAR text alerts. Let's send it down to Lindsay.
Thanks, Adam. Jeff Burton knows how to win at this track. He's done it 4 times. What do you think of your car since this practice started?
It drives good, but we need a little bit of speed for the race. We've been trying some stuff, and feel like we learned a lot to apply to tomorrow. And really, that's what this is all about, is just trying to try some stuff and apply it to tomorrow. And then ultimately, when tomorrow is over, to feel like you're good going into Sunday. But we're off a little bit on speed, but we got it driving good, and that's the first step.
You are one of 4 drivers that has run each race at this track. How has this track changed?
It's changed a lot. When they changed the bottom groove and they took all the banking out of it and added banking to the top, that really changed the racetrack because it opened up the bottom. Anytime you want to go down there, it's there. There's just no grip. And then double bottom restarts have made a huge difference here, probably as much here as anywhere, because this is the hardest place to get going on restarts. It's just so slick on restarts. So those 2 things have made the biggest difference.
How much would it mean to you, Jeff? Because you guys have been right there knocking on the door.
We have. For us, we just gotta keep doing the good stuff we're doing and improve on the stuff we haven't done so well. We seem to have speed that we need. We just gotta capitalize a little bit, keep people from running over top of us, and me making mistakes, and we'll be fine.
All right, Jeff, best of luck. Yes, Jeff is not afraid to mince words about the recent retaliation and payback that could go on at this track. Adam.
See Casey Kane on track, currently 28th in this practice. In the last couple of weeks has gained 5 positions in the standings to 18th, and back in the conversation when you talk about drivers that still have a chance to make the chase.
But I like what this race team is doing. Casey Kane knows he will not be there next year at Richard Petty Motorsports. But now, not only finishing 4th at Infineon, back-to-back top 5 finishes. So what I'm seeing is Casey Kane, Kenny Francis, that race team, it's business as usual trying to make this chase.
It is business as usual. And that's just being a professional. And that's how simple that is. You see guys that say they're leaving and they kind of throw in the towel and that's it. Those guys didn't. For you fans that were watching that, when he came around the corner and came in the flames shooting out of the tailpipes, he had a clean cut. Obviously, he had cut that thing clean in the middle of the backstretch so the guys could read the plug, so they understand where they're at. They're probably getting close to getting ready to start doing some of their qualifying stuff.
Was that another question from Twitterville?
No, that was not. That was just a random Kyle Petty thing to say, hey, I used to drive one of these things. I kind of knew something about it. Not really, though.
How many people live in Twitterville?
My God, I don't know. There's millions of them, man. I made them mad about U.S. soccer and the World Cup and some other stuff in starting parks yesterday, so they've been mad at me for a day or so.
We had to remind Kyle last week that his name was Petty and not Pele. That's how much he was talking about the World Cup.
They wore me out last week, man.
Haven't mentioned Brad Keselowski's name much today, and we should have. He's 6th quick in this practice session. It would appear, based on the numbers, he's been working on qualifying trim, but it's good to see Brad up near the front of the list.
And Brad had a good finish here in the race last year. A lot to do with some strategy, but a good top 10 run. He was actually driving the 09 car for James Finch.
Hard to believe last year Brad ran a part-time schedule, as you mentioned, was not with one team throughout the year, had a couple of top 10 finishes, and Kyle, they're still searching for their first top 10 of this season.
Yeah, but I'm going to say this. He had some top 10 finishes last year. He's run really good this year a lot of places.
Yeah.
And to have nothing to show for it. We can go all the way back to Atlanta when the incident happened at Atlanta. He had a top 5 car going at Atlanta that day. And I think Brad, coming to this team, Hornish, a year under his belt, getting better. You look at this being the single Dodge team and all that Dodge puts behind it and all that Penske puts behind it. This whole team, it's taken all those elements to make this team. You heard him cut it clean right there. All these teams together, or all these elements together, have made this a better team.
Of course, Keselowski is the point leader in the NASCAR Nationwide Series, one of the 12 drivers doing double duty this weekend here at New Hampshire. Roughly 1 hour into a 90-minute practice session for Sprint Cup Series teams here in Loudon, New Hampshire. Good to have you with us for NASCAR on Speed. Mentioned earlier, Casey Mears was in the 83 a couple of weeks ago. With the change in the driver lineup there, he has landed back in the 36 car.
And this car will be racing on Sunday, and next week at Daytona, our old buddy Steve Park could be in this 36 car.
No way. It'd be good to see Steve back. Steve is you know, he's had a couple of turns and you know, not really. After his accident, he really kind of got shuffled out, and he's come back and he's run good in a lot of races. So it'd be cool to see him in Daytona, man.
Let's hear from the point leader, down to Lindsay.
Thanks, guys. Kevin Harvick just said he likes it here because it's not hot, right?
Yeah.
And you said the track's not either. So what do you think? Is your car as hot as your golf game apparently is right now?
I hope it's better than my golf game because it's not very good. But our Shell Pennzoil Chevrolet's driving pretty good. It's just so small increments here to everybody's so close that you got to work on just getting through the center of the corner and being able to still drive the thing up off. So we've done what we can do in race trim, and now we'll switch to qualifying trim and see where we go from there.
Seriously, why do you enjoy driving here so much?
Well, I grew up at racetracks like Phoenix and those types of flat racetracks on the West Coast, and so we've always had a pretty good flat track program at Loudon and Richmond and Phoenix. So just enjoy coming here, and the racetrack's a lot of fun too.
My last question for you, but as we get in these last races towards the chase, how does your mindset change? Obviously, you're exactly where you guys want to be.
Yeah, well, I think the thing for us right now is we just got to win a couple races. That's the main thing, is the bonus points. Try to get a few more points and just keep doing what we're doing. So I know they're working hard at the shop to try to build some new stuff and try to make it just a little bit better. And hopefully when the chase starts, we'll have all that stuff ready.
Kevin Harvick, happy so far.
David Reagan making progress. Just shot to 8th on the board in this practice session.
Yeah, the scoring monitor will be hard to keep up with now because, as you mentioned, an hour down, 30 minutes to go. We noticed a while ago there was only one car out on the racetrack. It's because I think everyone, whether you were in qualifying trim or race trim, you will be focused solely on qualifying these last 30 minutes.
And there's not a lot of room at this racetrack. So how hard is it as a driver and team to get an honest reading on your qualifying run, Kyle?
I don't think you get an honest reading. I think Larry said it best when he talked about tire temperature. You get into that mode where it's a false sense of how fast you think you can run, because the racetrack's hot, people are running on it, there's rubber on it, and then all of a sudden when it gets cool, or when you go and the racetrack sets for a little while. How many racetracks do we go to that when it's set, the racetrack just sets and there's nobody on it? It changes. And you go out and you think, my car's going to plow, dude. It's just going to plow. And you go down the first corner and you're sideways and backwards and grabbing. And the next button you scream at is the radio screaming at Larry McReynolds like, what'd you change on this car for qualifying? What'd you change? And drivers don't, as a driver, you drive a little bit deeper. You jump to the gas a little bit quicker. You never give a crew chief what you're going to do in qualifying. I don't care what they say.
And Larry, when you hear that, you say something, but you don't key your mic, right?
Yeah.
This is true. You bite your tongue a lot now.
Yeah. No. I used to have crew chiefs and they'd say, good job. You took a 5th place car and qualified 38th with it. Come on in. Bring it in. We'll get it ready to race.
Now there you see Mark Martin in the 5 car just jumped up to 2nd quickest. Right before that we saw A.J. Allmendinger, who right now is 4th quickest. Not surprising, because remember back at Phoenix, a fairly similar racetrack, A.J. Allmendinger sat on the pole there.
Here's Jeff Gordon. 3 wins here at Loudon, and 29th is where he is, an indication that he has been working on the car in race trim, and he just bettered that. Up to 18th on the board is Gordon, so I have obviously made the move over to the qualifying side.
But he'll be the first to tell you, as we see his crew chief Steve Letarte, yeah, he has 3 wins here, but that last one was 12 years ago, back in 1998. But he has finished 2nd in 3 of the last 6 races here. Just hadn't been to victory lane in a while.
Up to 3rd. And that's a good point where the 2nd lap was his fastest lap. You saw that. 18th on the 1st lap, 3rd there. So watch that in qualifying.
Everyone continues to chase his teammate, Jimmy Johnson, fastest in practice. "25 minutes left in the opening practice session of the weekend for the Sprint Cup Series here at Sonoma, and trouble down the front straightaway. Bobby Labonte driving the 7 car right at the start-finish line.
Wow.
Gets a piece of the wall.
And it really looks like something happened coming out of 4, and the car, if you look at the marks, they go across the racetrack into the inside wall, and then he's back into the outside.
He come off 4 and just headed to the inside wall. He's out of the car already.
Yeah, obviously he's a little frustrated with it. You can tell by the body language there.
They know they will definitely be unloading a backup car, and this car, of course, is locked in. They're in the top 35 in owner points, but I don't see any way he'll get any laps in that backup car before this practice is over.
If they do, it'll be a miracle, because that's incredibly hard. And you heard the radio say it just came off the corner and turned straight to the inside. If it turns straight to the inside that fast, then obviously something could have broken or something like that. But as you see the marks, he gets on the brakes really, really early as it comes off the wall.
You know, I think we should explain why Bobby Labonte's in this 7 car. Robbie Gordon had a commitment to go to Argentina. Let's take a look at this, though, Kyle, before we explain the whole deal there.
Here he is coming off the wall, or coming off the corner. You see him there, the car just jumps and turns dead sideways. I mean, for whatever reason, the car got sideways way early back there. You know, that's not a place where you'd think it, but you can see the left front. He goes into the inside wall, bounces back across and into the outside wall. So, I mean, that's a tough break for that team. To come off the run they had last week with Robbie, then Robbie not be here and put Bobby in the car, I think they were pretty confident that they could come in here and have something. I don't know how he had been running or whether they'd switched over. They were still, they were still in race mode. He had the fastest 10-lap average in race mode, so they were still in some of their race mode, it looks like.
So a tough break for Bobby Labonte. Brad Keselowski currently 10th quick in this practice session. Let's hear from him. Matt?
Working at him primarily on qualifying setup. You felt like it was a good lap, maybe even better than what the chart showed.
Well, yeah, you know, I came over the radio and was just wondering if we were sure NASCAR got the time right, because it felt pretty good, you know. Got AAA on board this week. We want to have a good showing for them on both Sam and I's cars, and I think so far we're off to a good start. We're practicing well, and you know, to be good at the Cup level, you have to execute the whole weekend, from the first practice session to qualifying to happy hour, and then the race is just a culmination of all that. So, you know, we're off to a good start, but we still have a lot of work to go.
When you look at this season, a lot of solid runs, just not the finishes you'd hope for. What impresses you the most about how this team has continued to grow this season?
Well, the biggest thing to me is that we keep building new cars and keep trying to grow. You know, I went through a stretch of races where I think I ran like 8 or 9 races with all brand new cars in a row. So that's pretty awesome. I really appreciate that. I appreciate the Fab Shop and all those guys working so hard to keep giving us new cars, and hopefully they're watching and they're still working, because I wrecked one last week. We need to replace that one. So, you know, just got to keep digging, got to keep finding more speed, try to catch up with Kurt. He's doing a great job over there, and if we can get to Kurt's level, I feel like the two of us can push each other and make us that much stronger.
All right, good luck with the rest of the weekend.
Thank you.
Well, that's the good thing about this 12 team, that they have the benchmark within their organization, the 2-car of Kurt Busch. But just to put the period on this 7 story, Robbie Gordon, after coming off that 2nd place finish last week, he had a sponsorship commitment out of the country in Argentina. He was going to put P.J. Jones in this car, and basically because of lack of sponsorship, just do a start and park. Bobby Labonte parted ways with TRG Motorsports, the 71 team, and there you see Gene Need, the crew chief for the 17. Robbie, when that Bobby became available, he said, you know what? I want Bobby Labonte to go to New Hampshire and run my race car. I'm very anxious to hear his feedback and opinion on my race cars and my race team, because I think Robbie's been questioning a lot of things that's been going on. One reason he brought Gene Need on board after Gene Need left the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series team with Skinner.
The athletic Gene Need, by the way.
Yeah, that was pretty.
He made a nice jump.
Nice
there,
little dismount there.
I'll give him 7.5.
Yeah, that's
what do you guys think?
That may have been just frustration coming out.
By the way, Montoya now quickest. A busy NASCAR weekend in Loudon, New Hampshire, off and rolling. Good to have you with us for Sprint Cup Series practice at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway. You see them rolling out the backup car, the 7 of Bobby Labonte this weekend. He was involved in an incident just moments ago. He has been released from the infield care center, and now the crew going to go hard to work and get this car ready for qualifying later this afternoon. Mentioned on our way to break, Juan Montoya now quickest in this practice session. And Larry mentioned earlier he was the pole winner when the Sprint Cup Series came here back in September.
You know, this will be Bobby Labonte's 599th career start here this weekend. It sounds like he's going to go to Daytona driving the 09 car for James Finch. His 600th career start there next weekend.
Wow.
One more time in case you missed it, Bobby Labonte, the car you see coming off 4 right now.
And look how far away he is from the wall when the things get loose. You see a lot of guys come off right at the wall. This thing just gets loose really, and it's really late. You see where he hits, he's on around the corner and almost up on the straightaway when this thing just turns left on him. But gets into the inside wall, bounces off to the outside. And you know, we see this multiple times during the course of the year. These guys have to go back through the inspection process all over again with this car. This is why you can't just unload a car and get out on the racetrack. If they could unload a car and just go straight to the racetrack, Bobby could get some time on the racetrack. But they've got to go back through this process all over again. They've got to go back through the cage. They've got to go back through all the templates. all the measurements, everything has to be done before that car can go back to the track.
And this is one of the benefits of being inside the top 35, because if he were not, their chances of making this race, if you throw out Bobby Labonte being a past champion, would be seriously jeopardized right now.
That team was in that position not many weeks ago.
But, you know, and the one good thing about this is the NASCAR officials really work well with a team like this. They don't have to go through the fuel cell process. They don't have to go through the pump process. There's a lot of that stuff they will waylay and take and let you do after this practice session is over with. But the majority of it, they have to go through this.
Now, this is the grid of templates here that they will lower down on that race car. We used to have all those templates, but they were not connected together. And it was very easy to twist your race car.
And remember, you'd have to go back through, and they'd put one on. Oh, the wrong template. I got the Buick. I got to get the Pontiac over here. You know what I mean? This is really simple. They just drop these things down, and it is a lot faster, but it is hard to get a car to match this stuff. These guys work really hard. The guys in the fab shops are the unsung heroes of guys these race cars right now. I'm gonna tell you, because they work tirelessly week in and week out. And you can take a car and roll it through there, and it fits those templates, run a race with it, and it don't fit those templates anymore, and not hit anything. It's just the way the car flexes.
The cars are back rolling. Kevin Harvick being shown 25th. Likely has not worked on a qualifying run. Perhaps that's what he's doing now as we enter this last 15 minutes of the opening practice session of the weekend.
You know, this question didn't come from Twitterville. This question came from our production truck. Barry Landis, our producer, Mike Wells, our director. Why at some tracks do we only even think about running one lap of qualifying, even though you have to? In a place like this, like Kyle mentioned a while ago about Jeff Gordon, you're going to run 2 laps, and more than likely the fastest lap is going to be the second. The biggest reason here, it's one of those racetracks, like a lot of short tracks, because this is a short track. They call it a speedway. She's a short track. Heat in the tires really makes a difference in the grip of the tires. You take a couple of weeks in Chicagoland Speedway, actually you start to lose grip in the tires on lap 2. But the big reason at the big tracks, most teams will only run 1 lap. It takes so long to get around there. You put all that tape on the nose, the engine really starts getting hot the second lap.
We're sitting here and these guys are running 28-second laps, 28.5, 28.75, 29-second laps, call it that. You go to Pocono, by the time you leave pit road and come back around on your out lap for qualifying, you've been out there a minute or more, and then you've got to run a 56-second lap, so it's 2 minutes. You can run 2 laps under a minute here, where at Pocono, to get your first lap in, you've already been out there almost 2 minutes. So it's about a tape combination, it's about the tire grip, it's about a lot of things. There's a lot of strategy and a lot of stuff that goes into a qualifying lap. A lot more than the driver just going out there and busting a lap.
Larry mentioned that this is like a short track, and it felt like a short track last week at Sonoma, even though it's a road course. A lot of banged up race cars, one of them driven by Regan Smith, who broke his wrist in a mid-race accident last week, Larry.
Yeah, right now Regan is 10th quickest, and there's going to be no one standing by for Regan. They've actually fitted him with a custom molded splint. It's his left wrist that got fractured, but he plans on running all the race on Sunday.
You know, and it's easier to break a wrist as a driver sometimes at a place like Watkins Glen or Sonoma, because you're left and you're right, and you get your arms and you get your hands in positions that you're not used to on a cup. You know, as a driver, you get used to going in the corner, and if that thing's getting ready to hit something, you'll have a tendency to turn loose of the steering wheel or let something happen so it doesn't spin and break your thumb. Sprint car drivers used to break thumbs and break wrists all the time. I think you get used to that, but at Riverside, or excuse me, at Riverside, man, I'm going way back. at Infineon, you're turning left and you're turning right, and you get your arms and your hands in different positions. You hit a tire, something happened, and that wheel spins. And basically that's what happened to him when he wrecked. Everything spun around on him and just got him in a bad place.
And you know what's amazing about you mentioning that? I couldn't help but think back to the ARCA race at Daytona that Danica Patrick got spun out on the front straightaway, the in-car camera shot, and I think this is what they're taught.
Yeah.
In Indy cars, she kept releasing the steering wheel. It's to get her hands away from those spokes while that wheel was doing all that spinning.
Yeah, they spin it really fast, believe me, man. It'll pop your thumb out of joint in a heartbeat.
I'm just glad I haven't found out yet.
It's only painful for a short period of time.
Now, it wasn't that long ago that Joe Nemechek was well up inside the top 5, but as I mentioned, the score monitor really starting to change. Now, he is the fastest of the go-or-go homers, but he's now 26th quickest. 45 cars here, 2 will not make this show. Right now, the 2 slowest go-or-go homers, David Strimmy in the 26 car and Todd Bodine in the 64 car.
And Larry, you know this as a crew chief. How bizarre, how stressful is it now? You were preparing, you were getting your stuff ready to go qualify, you were going to look for a clean track, you were going to get all that stuff, and then Bobby wrecks and takes about 10 or 15 minutes out of practice. So now the last 15 or 20 minutes is incredibly hectic because you'll get guys out there that'll get in each other's way, and then you'll start seeing guys screaming on the radio and not knowing the lap that they're going to be able to lay down.
And because of the delay for the cleanup of that accident that Kyle mentioned, NASCAR has extended this practice by 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Glad to hear that, aren't you, driver?
No.
Here are the drivers that must qualify on speed later today. And go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, there's normally a gentleman's agreement to try to stay out of everybody's way, but in about 5 minutes, which would be 10 minutes to go, that gentleman's agreement will go out the window.
Oh, it goes out the window. And the worst place for it is Daytona and Talladega when people are trying. Oh, my God. You'll get guys that pick up 10 miles an hour at qualifying because they get a draft, and they're just mad when they come in. But it is. There is normally a gentleman's agreement, and it's hard to believe these guys race like they race and run like they run and beat on each other and do the things they do to win a Sprint Cup race. But when it comes to practice, there is that gentleman's agreement. I'll give you space, you give me space. And you'll see guys that'll be finishing their lap that'll pull down on the apron and all but wreck trying to get out of somebody's way because they want that same courtesy when they go out the next time.
Well, it's good at some point throughout the weekend you guys can get along.
Yeah, at some point.
Clint Boyer has jumped up to 3rd. He was 10th a lap ago. Another indication of how much speed you can pick up on that second lap of your qualifying run. And his teammate Jeff Burton right in front of him.
That's the Childress cars have always run good here.
Yeah.
I mean, just always from. You talked about Robbie Gordon when he won here in a Childress car. You look at Burton. You look at, there's so many guys who run good, but the Childress organization just seemed to have latched onto something here from the first time.
Yeah, in 2007, Clint sat on the pole here and led about 2/3 of that race to win the race. But you know, something I just noticed, you had mentioned, Adam, about Juan Pablo Montoya being fastest in that 42 car. If we get a cloud covering later on today, I don't know that we will, he's within 2/10 of the track record with that lap time right there of a 28.76. The track record is 7 years old, set by Ryan Newman back in 2003 at a 28.56.
Wow. That's pretty impressive right there with where we're at right now. You know, and looking at the rundown, there's Ambrose is 6th, which is a big boost for that team. We talked about him coming back from where they were last week and what happened. For him to come here and put up that kind of time in practice, whether you back it up in qualifying or whatever, that takes a lot of the sting out of what's going on.
Well, we have one book that says one thing and one book that says the other. I stand to be corrected. Actually, the track record was set by Montoya back in September of last year at a 28.54, but he's still within 2/10 of what the track record is.
That part didn't change, Larry. That part did not change.
Different time, same driver.
Same driver. You're the man.
Hey, what's 5/1000ths of a second?
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
And I got to appreciate you correcting that because I would have just said it as fact and went on down the road. Okay.
We would have known.
But the people in Twitterville would have lit it up.
That's true.
What do you have, Lindsay?
Well, I had a chance to talk to Mark Martin briefly before he went out for qualifying, and I know that right now he's pretty happy with how this car is acting. He said the balance is very good. And you guys know as well as anyone that it's got to be a huge relief for Mark. He also said that as far as in race runs, they were pleasantly surprised with the amount of speed that they were able to pick up. And when he's talking about turning it around at this track, you know, he's talking about his entire season, which he really feels like they've got to make some headway, and he feels like this could be a weekend. I think for the first time they're seeing glimmers of hope. Matt?
Team very excited about what they've seen so far. Lindsay's the 43 of A.J. Allmendinger, the Phoenix pole winner. They didn't bring that car. They lost that at Darlington in a crash. This was the Richmond car, but it's looking good so far. 5th on the board. And after the last change, he says it's still a little free on entry, but the car just stuck so well on exit when he jumped back in the gas, and it turned excellent. So a lot of positive things taking place down here with the 43 back on a mile racetrack.
Another driver has now entered the 28-second bracket, Matt. It's the man you see on screen, Tony Stewart, a 2-time winner here in New Hampshire. 28 21:87. He is now second behind Montoya. As Larry mentioned, Juan turning a 28:76 earlier in this session.
You know, this team just recently went to Milwaukee and tested, as we've documented a lot of teams did. And I talked to Darian Grubb, the crew chief for Tony Stewart, a few weeks ago, and he felt like they hit on some things at Milwaukee that's going to help their program at a lot of different racetracks.
And that seems odd, Larry, just from this standpoint. Milwaukee doesn't favor many tracks that we go to on the circuit. So what are you working on at a place like that that would carry over across the course of a season?
A lot of times, Adam, it has nothing to do with the Pacific racetrack. It's A-Bing things, and all of a sudden it may be A-Bing spindle combinations or rear end housings, and all of a sudden you hit on something that, wow, I like that. That felt good, and the stopwatch backed it up, and maybe it carries over to a lot of different racetracks.
And it never hurts to develop confidence and gain some momentum. Joey Logano spun earlier in this session. He's back on track now. Less than 10 minutes remain in the opening Sprint Cup Series practice of the weekend. Jimmy Johnson has been quick throughout this day. Second is where he's slotted in right now. He just jumped up in front of Tony Stewart. No one quicker than Montoya. No rest for the 42 bunch, Larry. They've been at the top of the board now for the last 15-20 minutes of this session, but they continue to work trying to dial it in.
You know, it wasn't that long ago we showed you the last three finishes of Montoya at Pocono, Michigan, and Infineon. But the thing, and nobody knows this more than this group has got to seal the deal on a given race day. It's like they can put the beginning and the middle together. Yeah. They just can't put the beginning, the middle, and the end and get the victory lane for whatever reason.
But I will say this, you know, when he came in, everybody talked about he's going to, you know, whether it's the Glen or whether it's Infineon, he's going to be the guy. And he was that first year. But the progress that those guys made in the last 10 races when they got into chase last year was phenomenal to me. That was a story that I don't think anybody expected. It's like, yeah, okay, Juan's in the chase, big deal. But those first 5 or 6 races, man, he was second, he was third, and you just knew that oval win was coming. And it's the same thing, and that's what you're saying this year. He's right there. They're knocking on the door. They put themselves in position. They got to break that glass at some point in time and get through there. And when they do, it's going to be a big deal.
But you know, it was this time last year when he was in the hunt to make the chase, one of those drivers right there on the edge throughout that race leading to September. He was the odd man out on everybody's sheet. Everyone felt like he was the one that would not make the chase. He was able to do so, and as Kyle pointed out, was able to make good once he arrived. And it's been unfortunate the team has not enjoyed more success here in 2010.
You just saw Ryan Newman a second ago in that 39 car. Ryan has jumped up to 5th quickest, and here's Jeff Burton in the 31 car, 7th quickest right now.
Here's another team that is overdue on a victory, and not because they have struggled, but because they've been so close so many times only to have something go wrong in the latter part of the race.
Well, he talked about it a while ago when we interviewed him. You know, he got spun out late in the race at Infineon, finished 27th. Had a good top 5, top 10 run going at Charlotte Motor Speedway last month, and he and Kyle Busch got together late in the race. So if the races were about 50 miles shorter, Jeff would be sitting in pretty good shape right now.
But you go back to the Charlotte thing. I think that was frustration. You go back to Martinsville. He was running in the top 5 and has a flat tire with 3 or 4. I mean, there's 3 or 4 races that we could go back that this guy's going to either win or run 2nd or 3rd in, and he ends up 15th, 20th, 30th. It doesn't make any difference. He's back in the pack somewhere.
I said that to Todd Barrier, his crew chief, earlier today. He said, I got a spreadsheet that'll tell you a lot more about that. I said, I bet you do.
Well, Regan Smith in that 78 car, bad loose off of turn 2. Right now he's 21st quickest. He's run a total of 17 laps.
Eight of the 9 drivers at the top of the practice sheet right now have gone to victory lane here at New Hampshire. More coming up after break. 3 minutes left in an extended practice session for Sprint Cup teams. Talk about drivers at the top. 2 names you have not heard in a while. Matt Kenseth, currently 30th. Dale Earnhardt Jr., who is 32nd. And while we were away, Brad Keselowski paying a visit to the backstretch wall.
And this is weird. You see the cars start jumping up and down, and that was about 2/3 of the way down the backstretch.
Yeah, there's the white line. I mean, he's almost getting ready to get in, and it's like he just let the car drift out a little bit farther than he wanted it to, and it just got into the right rear. And, you know, they'll obviously, now they have to go in. They'll have to re-square the rear end, make sure all that's right so it can duplicate what he just did. But you see that wheel, man, it's almost like it rolled the bead in a little bit. I mean, he hit that thing a lot harder than it looked like.
And they'll have to make sure everything's right, because I doubt he'll get back out on the racetrack with that 12 car, as we only, as Adam said, only about a couple of minutes left.
You know who used to always do that? Mark Martin. Mark Martin could hit the wall in the middle of the straightaway more than anybody because he just used the whole racetrack. He absolutely wanted every bit of the racetrack, whether it was going in, coming off, but in the middle of the straightaway. If you were racing, Mark, you'd check up in the middle of the straightaway thinking he was getting ready to wipe out because dust would go everywhere.
We mentioned Kenseth and Earnhardt Jr. and where they are in this practice session, both outside the top 25. Harvick and Edwards also outside the top 25.
29-17.
You come to expect it from Harvick, who just went up to 23rd, because every week he seems to start wherever he feels like and drive his way right through the field to the front.
I tell you, it's going to be a tight qualifying, because you look right now, Montoya's fastest at 28.76. Kenseth at 30th at a 29.29. Might as well just call it a half a second.
And we'll see if Matt Kenseth makes a jump here, Larry.
Yeah, I think I touched on it earlier. As you can see him scrubbing his tires in, again, trying to get some heat in those tires. But he has a new crew chief this week, Jimmy Finning, who was a championship crew chief in 2004 with Kurt Busch. He and Todd Parrott have pretty much, for the most part, swapped roles between the crew chief for Matt and manager of the R&D department at Roush Fenway.
Third crew chief of the year for Matt Kenseth. Started the campaign with Drew Blickensderfer, who has moved over to the Nationwide Series working with Carl Edwards. And as Larry pointed out, Todd Parrott, the man in the middle. Jimmy Finning now calling the shots for Matt Kenseth.
I tell you what's going on right here with a lot of teams, Kyle, is I think a lot of teams may be going out and just putting about a half a lap, just buffing the new off the tires they're going to qualify with.
And you ask why they do that. A lot of times that's just to get that glaze off the tires so it picks up heat a lot quicker. It's just like scrubbing the varnish off something.
Saw the red and black flags indicating practice number 1 is behind us. Juan Pablo Montoya, the quickest. Jimmy Johnson good as well.
Our fastest go or go home car is Travis Kvapil, that's back in the 27th position. The two slowest, Todd Bodine and David Stremme.
We'll see if these drivers can back up their speeds later today right here on Speed. We have qualifying. Thanks for being with us for this 90-minute practice session. With Kyle Petty and Larry McReynolds, I'm Adam Alexander. John Roberts and NASCAR Live happening right now in Loudon, New Hampshire.